Hey guys, OG Albina here, bringing you guys yet another tier list video. Today we are going to be going over the poison types and how well I think they are in the Draft League format when it comes to their viability and, more important, their value that they offer at the price point they're at. We're going to be ranking them S through D tier, and yeah, it'll be a good time. If you guys enjoyed today's tier list video, be sure to drop a like on the video as well as sub to the channel. The support lately has been immense, and I really do appreciate it a ton. Pushing towards 2,000. Be sure to drop a comment too to enter into our Scarlet and Violet giveaway, which I will be obviously selecting within the next month. So be sure to get in on that before the time does expire. And yeah, with that being said, we can jump right into it. Now, like I said, I'm going to be ranking these guys kind of based on their value, in the sense that, say, I think that Arbok offers immense value, even though it's only in like 3 points typically. I think, man, this is the best 3-pointer in the game. Spoilers, I don't think that, and I put it in S tier because I think that's where its viability lies. But then Mega Venusaur, I'm like, man, for the price point it's at, it's just not worth it. D tier. It's not that I think that Arbok should be priced higher than Venusaur, it's that I think that its value is inherently better in a Draft League setting. So I just want to clear that up before we jump in there, because I've had a few people be like, why is Audino in S tier and, you know, X normal type that's 10 points more in D tier? Because I think that it's not worth the value, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that being said, let's jump on into it. And speaking of Venusaur, it's the first grass type in the Pokedex, obviously being the first line in the Pokedex. When we talk about regular Veno, I think I talked about it in my grass. I think in the context of a grass type, I'm going to put it in B, not because of its defensive viability. Obviously, it's a pretty bad defensive ground. Not being resistant to ground, or a bad defensive grass. Not being resistant to ground is a big downside when it comes to the grass typing defensively. It's also a poison that can't T-Spike, which is a bit annoying, but offensively, Venu is demonic under stun, regular Venu. And this is one of the few times in which I feel like I have to talk about the Mega completely separate from the original Pokemon, because it really does feel like Venusaur plays completely different, much more offensively on those Sun teams. And while it might be hard to draft those kinds of teams and fit something like a Venusaur on your squad, it's going to be a big menace whenever you have to either build or play against it, or both, obviously. It can be an absolute demon. So we're going to go ahead and put it in B tier. I will be putting Big Brother Mega Venusaur in A tier. This thing is very bulky. It performs really well in fatter balance teams with partners like Celesteela. I feel like Celesteela, what do you call it, Mega Venusaur was like a tried and true core that I used to always see back in the day. And there's obviously plenty of other things you could draft Venu with. It spreads great knockoffs and leech seeds, it synths up, it Giga Drains, Sludge Bomb, and Earth Powers just like the other. I've even seen SD Venusaur thrive, or even just really offensive Venusaur with its you know, strong base stats in general. It's able to, you know, really do a lot of damage in a lot of instances. Let's look at that Mega Venusaur special attack stat, because I don't remember it off the top of my head. Mega Venusaur, 122. Like, that's really not that bad. 100 base physical attack too, so it can go mixed, it can go special physical, whatever you want to get it, and 80 base speed. So this thing can be deceptively strong and offensive, while also being just, again, ridiculously bulky. Thick, fat on a grass type is just such a blessing. And this thing can just be an absolute nuisance for so many teams. Now, I guess I'm wrong in the sense that, like, no, because I think Beedrill and Mega Beedrill play pretty similarly. The thing is that Beedrill is certified terrible, right? It is an awful Pokemon, while Mega Beedrill is a very solid Pokemon that deserves to be up in A tier. And the reason Mega Beedrill is so solid is because of that base 145, I think it is, speed tier, which is pretty insane, especially on a bug type with adaptability and U-turn. It is such a valuable tool to have to be able to throw off the strongest U-turns humanly possible, really, it feels like, and just U-turn in and out of the game at will. On top of that, Poison Stab, which is great, and then access to moves like Knock Off and Drill Run are really cool coverage options for yourself. You can even T-Spike up and as you force a switcher, maybe even throw off an SD, or, you know, maybe even an Iron Defense and pull up with the Iron B. But really, you're going to mostly just be U-turning around this thing, forcing switches and revenge killing a ton of things with your great speed tier. It's very hard to use. It's very hard to use if you don't have great means of positioning them with other U-turn and Volt Turn, because its bulk is so terrible. But if you can find the opportunity to do so, it's going to be an absolute menace for so many teams to deal with. Alrighty, sorry about that. I got a phone call real quick from my mom and had to answer, of course. So now we're back. We're going to jump right back into it with Arbok. And unfortunately, Arbok is another D tier poison. It's not necessarily that I think this Pokemon is awful. Maybe it's just in the fact that I have not seen, like, empirical evidence of, like, it performing in a Draft League setting, because I don't think I've literally ever played an Arbok in Draft League. Now, I know that it can int him. I know that it has like Sucker Punch and Coil and Gunk Shot and Glare, which all seem like good tools, but I think really where just Arbok falls flat is going to be in its very mediocre stats. Really not having a stat higher than 95 in its attack. Everything else is 80 or lower, which is just, at this point in Pokemon with power creep and things like that, it's just not going to be a Pokemon that's going to thrive and do well in a format like this. So I'm personally going to keep it down here in D tier. Maybe that's a Pokemon we need to do on fixing your favorites. But yeah, who knows? Not the best Pokemon, unfortunately. Next up, though, we do have 2 S tier Pokemon, and it's going to be Nidoking and Queen. Now, I think these Pokemon are very interchangeable. Their Poison Ground typing is phenomenal defensively. They check 2 of the best Pokemon in the format, and Tapu Koko, Zeraora, just infinitely. They physically just cannot break them very well at all. It takes a lot of like weird shenanigans to try and do so. They're very reliable rockers and tier spikers, and with Sheer Force, they are incredible wall breakers. Sheer Force plus Life Orb with Earth Power, Sludge Wave, and then coverage moves and Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, all these different coverage moves and things like that. As the Gen 1 Pokemon they are, is just impossible to switch into, it feels like. They both have great offensive and defensive utility. Personally, the more I've played throughout the generations, I used to be more of a Nidoqueen guy. I think I'm more of a Nidoking guy now. I really just love the offensive prowess of it and a little bit better of a speed tier, outpacing all those base 80s and things like that. It's just a little bit more nice for me. And it can still be spec'd to be very bulky. Now, I think it also depends on the team and which one you'll want. If you appreciate the breaking prowess of Nidoking better, or like the insane defensive value that Nidoqueen offers, but they're still just like insane poison types, especially for their poison and ground types for their price point. I think they definitely belong up here in S tier in context with all of the other poisons in the format, personally. They're just so reliable what they do and such good Pokemon. Next up, we're going to have our first C tier here in Golbat. Golbat's a very good Eviolite defensive pivot. It can U-turn around, taunt Super Fang with a very solid base speed stat of, I think, base 90, which is really, really solid for a Pokemon as bulky as it is with an Eviolite. It can be a little bit passive, and it's a flying type that has to take Rock Slammer since it can't be Boots no matter what. Now, not every flying type has to be Boots, but it's nice to have the option, obviously, so I think that's something that really kind of weighs Golbat down, is the Rock's weakness plus its passivity. It can definitely be exploited, but there are some matches for it. It's just very, very annoying to deal with, and a lot of squads don't deal with it particularly well, so I am going to go ahead and put it in D tier. Next up, I'm going to put Vileplume here in C tier. Very, very bulky, annoying Pokemon. Again, the real downside to Vileplume, I think it would be so much better if it resisted ground, and unfortunately it's just a byproduct of being a poison type, being that poison ground grass combination. But really, this Pokemon's incredibly annoying with Strength Sap, Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, Effect Spore, sleep powdering things, leech seeding things, and just being a good defensive nuisance. Again, checking a lot of top tier Pokemon that are really, really annoying for a lot of squads, punishing U-turns, which is great because Draft League player loves to click U-turn. In the same vein, I do feel like I have to at least give honorable mention, put Gloom here in D tier. I've seen a lot of defensive viability, and a lot of times Gloom's been drafted in lower tier spots and things like that, especially in like 8mon. I believe in Clash of Kings, Speed Boosters had 2 Glooms on their 3 Sword and Shield standard teams. So it's definitely a Pokemon that's seen solid success and has done a solid job at checking some annoying things very, very well for a pretty cheaper price point, honestly. So yeah, that's very cool. And Vileplume, get the yawn counter going. Next up, we have Venomoth. I'm going to go ahead and put Venomoth here in C tier. I really like this Pokemon, personally. It's one of my favorite poison types from Gen 1. And I'm really excited for it in Scarlet and Violet decks because I feel like it's a metagame in which it can potentially thrive and do really well in a limited metagame, at least at the start of the gen before. We have DLCs and stuff like that, obviously, popping. But yeah, with Quiver Dance and Tinted Lens with Bug plus Poison Stab, Quiver Dance is, Tinted Lens is a beautiful tool because you don't need the super effective coverage of, like, an Earth Power or like a random Mystical Fire or something like that for Steel types, because you could break through them with Bug Buzzes in all honesty. Unless you're playing a Heatran, it's going to be doing a ridiculous amount of damage to whatever wants to come in with a +1 Bug Buzz, which is awesome. You can Roost, you can T-Spike, you can U-turn, you can do some fun things, honestly. You could even run up with a Spec Set or something like that. But I really do think this Pokemon has a lot of potential. Its base stats really let it down. But Tinted Lens plus Quiver Dance is always going to be a good time. Maybe if you had a little bit better with base stats, it'd be a lot better, but yeah. Next up, we have Victreebel. I'm also going to put Victreebel here in C tier, not because I think it's like a terrible Pokemon, it's just if you're drafting Sun, you're drafting Torkoal Sun. I don't think you should draft Ninetales Sun if somebody else gets Torkoal. Like, I don't think you should get Victreebel Ninetales if someone else gets Torkoal Venu. Just don't get Sun. Because I think Ninetales is terrible. And Victreebel obviously isn't as good as Venu, which is why it's going to be in a lower tier than it. Because I don't ever see it drafted. Because Venusaur is just much more reliable. It's a little bit bulkier. It has largely the same coverage. I think the only thing that Victreebel really has over it is going to be Sucker Punch. And other than that, Venu just seems superior in most ways. They both growth, and they both have, you know, like Weather Ball and Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, Leaf Storm, things like that, and they can be strong breakers, but I just don't see an instance in which I would personally rather have a Victreebel than a Venusaur. Let me know if there's more differences in the comments below that I'm not seeing right now, but I've never seen Victreebel have any success in a draft league setting because Venusaur is always available to be drafted because you're not drafting unless you have Sun, at least in my opinion. Next up, though, we do have Tentacruel. I'm going to put Tentacruel here in B tier. Kind of joining Venu here. This thing is a great rapid spinner. It spreads knockoffs and Scald and Sludge Bomb, passive status damage and things like that. It can T-Spike, and it's just a very reliable Spit-Def pivot. It can be incredibly annoying. Mirror Coat is another great tool on it. It's just a nice, spongy, especially defensive water. Now, it's a water that is weak to ground, which is, again, a bit unfortunate. It's kind of a curse of all these dual poison typing mons is like they have one great typing and then the poison typing just makes them weak to Earthquake, which is always a terrible thing, or just not resisted anymore. So that's always very, very tough. But nonetheless, it's still obviously like a very good Pokemon. And I've drafted it a million times and I really do enjoy it. So yeah. Next up, we're gonna put Alola Muck here in B tier and regular Muck here, honestly, in D tier. Now, Kurt just drafted regular Muck recently, but he's the only guy I've ever seen draft regular Muck, which seems to just be not as good Alola Muck. They can both go like Aphie, but Muck with stab knockoffs, as well as Shadow Sneak, which regular Muck has, with an AV. It's just really annoying with all the coverage that it does have access to. It can also run those Curse Recycle sets, though with the Super Berry nerf that Muck got in Gen 8, it was a big blow. I think Gen 7 Muck is damn near an S tier poison. And I probably would have put it up there with how much I love that thing with the 50% Iapapas, Gluttony, and Recycle. Oh my gosh, it was an insane Pokemon. It was so good. Now you can still run like Curse Talk sets as well, which I think is really solid. Like Curse Talk, knockoff, like Poison Touch or something like that can be really solid in a lot of matchups. But it's not going to have the same potency that it had in Usum, unfortunately, unless they decide to bring those Super Berries back up to speed, but I don't think they ever will because of VGC, unfortunately. So Muck kind of got the short end of the stick because of VGC nerfs and buffs and things like that, unfortunately. Next up, we have Gengar. Gengar is going to go up here in S tier as well. I'm going to put him here at the top. This mon's a demon. Now, I'm going to put Haunter in D tier as well. When I say everything that Gengar does, Haunter does it, but worse. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to explain what Haunter does in the same way that I explain Gengar. But Gengar, incredibly strong breaker. I think if you get this with good Volt Turn, good ways to get it in. Like, I love Urshifu Single Strike plus Gengar is like top one defensive, or offensive, not defensive, offensive core for me. Absolutely love it. These two guys with Urshifu, in fact, are my two favorite Pokemon to draft with it. But Gengar in particular is my personal favorite. Whether it be Shadow Ball, Sludge Wave, Focus Blast, Dazzling Gleam, Energy Ball, Thunderbolt, Icy Wind, whatever the coverage that you're choosing to click at the time is going to break through an opposing team. There's very few builds that can deal with a Gengar consistently and reliably because of its coverage and its just raw breaking power with the Life Orb or specs. It can be an absolute demon. Very fast with base 110, which is a great benchmark to hit on really any team. Having something like that's great. It's a great Scarfer as well. Just a very good Pokemon overall. And I love this Pokemon. It was a Pokemon that I didn't like going into Gen 8 very much. And even my first league in Gen 8 that I hadn't in, I made it to the championship of GDL Season 1, but I wasn't super impressed with Gengar. But then I kind of wasn't as bad anymore and used it more throughout the generation, and it's become like a top 10 kill leader mon for me all the time. It's an incredible one. Love Gengar to death. It's one of my personal favorites. Next up, though, it looks like I'm gonna move this guy right here because we're gonna talk about both of them. I'm going to go ahead. This is going to be weird to you guys. I don't know how many people are going to yell at me about this. I'm going to put regular Weezing in B tier and Galar Weezing in the bottom of C tier. I love regular Weezing, right? I think regular Weezing has some great defensive utility. Both of them have great defensive utility. But the big selling point for me is that Weezing is so much less expensive than Galar Weezing. I feel like Galar Weezing is honestly just a hindrance of a Pokemon. I really feel like the fairy typing is debilitating a lot of instances because it adds a lot of weaknesses and it doesn't add a lot of resistances that I super care about on a Pokemon like Galar Weezing. Whereas Weezing, it's that pure poison typing. It sets up T-Spikes. It can be neutralizing gas disrupt abilities, or even be Levitate to avoid its ground weakness, just like the other Mon, obviously. But it's so much cheaper, and it serves a lot more utility to so many different teams, whereas Weezing Galar kind of functions in the same way, but just becomes weak to a little bit more things and is like exponentially more expensive because it has the fairy typing tacked onto it. I absolutely hate that Pokemon. I think it's very bad. I will keep it a buck with you guys. I do not like Galar Weezing, and I don't recommend you draft it. I think it's a huge trap Mon. But yeah. Next up, we can finally move on to Gen 2. And you'll see after Gen 1, look how many Gen 1 poison types there are. After Gen 1, we move on to Gen 2 and onwards. There's really not as many. I mean, we have, what, 3 in Gen 2? So let's jump into the first one. It was going to be someone who's pretty bad, unfortunately, in Ariados. Now, it can web. It has priority in Chest. You can Sucker Punch. It can Sword Stance. But at the end of the day, it's not very strong. It's slow and it's frail. So it's very hard to get used out of it. I'm not a big webs player. Just because I don't think that they're inherently all too valuable when boots exist and you don't even have to bring removal for them anymore. You can just put boots on the mods you don't want slower. I'm just really not a big webs guy this generation, so I think Ariados lost really all of the value it had in my mind in between generations. So the only reason that Arbok is below it is because I've literally never seen anybody use Arbok. And at least Ariados has sticky webs as an option. Next up, we have Crobat. He's going to go up here in A tier. This Pokemon is great, man. 130 base speed makes pretty much any Pokemon good, which is obviously very nice, especially when you can U-turn, taunt, Super Fang, Brave Bird through teams. You can even nasty plot up and do some damage that way. You can defog. Just a great utility Mon for a very solid price. Great speed tier, great pivot, and just kind of glues a lot of builds and teams together very, very well. So, love me some Crobat. Next up, we have Qwilfish. I think Qwilfish has got to go here in B tier. Again, it's a pretty low-priced Mon, but for the value it offers with Intim, plus Spikes and T-Spikes, and Destiny Bond, Thunder Wave, and the Swift Swim option, boom, things like that, this thing can function as a great lead. It can function as a great physically defensive pivot with a Rocky Helmet, and it can function well offensively in some matchups as well with Liquidation Poison Jab, which is really cool as well. I won't be ranking Hisuian Qwilfish or Overqwil, just because I don't know anything about them yet. I won't be ranking any of these Hisuian Pokemon, unfortunately. Maybe if we get some more information on them in Scarlet and Violet, we'll be able to rank them next generation. But as of right now, unfortunately not. Alright, next up, unfortunately, we got another F tier, or D tier, basically F tier, in Dustox. Another Pokemon I've quite literally never seen used, and I feel like at least Arbok has Intimidate. I really don't know what Dustox is supposed to do besides maybe toxic things. U-turn, because it's a bug. I really couldn't tell you. It's going to sit down there in D tier. Next up, we have another really high valued low tier poison, which I feel like is a really cool thing in the poison type because you get a lot of low tier value out of them. A lot of the poison types at this level are very low tier in nature, and that's going to be Roselia, a very, very tried and true spiker and T-spiker. Eviolite, Spadef Wall, it can spread leeches and just be an overall general nuisance to so many different types of builds. And honestly requires a lot of respect in the builder for a Pokemon at its price point, which I think is always going to be very inherently valuable. Next up, we have one of my favorites. I love this guy to death, and Swalot. Another Pokemon I have quite literally never seen drafted. Now, John drafted it once and brought it once, and it didn't come out in the field. And then it sat on the bench for a season. But we do love backshots of Swalot. In fact, he will be on the next episode of Fixing Your Favorites. Spoilers for those of you who watch that series as well. Little treat for making it, you know, a good 20 minutes into the video or whatever it is. But yeah, it's got a great move pool. Honestly, offensively, I think where it just struggles, again, it's the base stats total. It's an early gen Mon that just struggles immensely with keeping up with how power crept and insanely strong everything is right now. So you can see where I'm going to kind of start fixing Swalot in that episode as well, I guess. Next up is Survivor, which is the same thing. I have never seen this guy drafted. It's going to go down here in D tier. I think it can coil. I think it's better mixed and like more immediately threatening offensively, but it doesn't have Intim, like Shed Skin or something like that. So yeah, he's going to stay down here. Next up, though, we have Roserade, and This is gonna be weird. I know people are gonna yell at me because of the weird rankings I have these poison types, but this is how I really do see him. Put Roserade in C tier. I'm not a big Roserade guy. I feel like it plays a lot more offensively than Roselia, and it lost a lot of its offensive prowess without having that technician boosted hidden powers anymore and hitting steals and stuff by all of them. It's still a phenomenal spiker, don't get me wrong, but if I'm going to spend this much on a grass type, I typically want it to resist ground, and Roserade is just a very squishy Pokemon, and I'm not here for the squishy grass types. Personally, at least at that price point most of the time. Now, I have drafted Roselia, and I do think it's like a good Pokemon. I know some people would put it up in A tier, so I feel like this might be the ranking that has people most at my throat. But we'll see, because I'm not a big Roselia guy, or Roserade guy. Okay, next up, we have Skuntank. We're already in Generation 4, by the way, which is pretty insane, considering how long Gen 1 took. Skuntank here is going to go in C tier as well. I'm going to go ahead and put him right behind, right in front of Vileplume, right here. I think the Poison Dark typing is incredible, but we're going to talk about a better Pokemon with that typing next. Being immune to Psychic as a Poison type is phenomenal. It's solid with an AV, it can defog. I've even seen Nasty Plot or even just like all-out offensive Skuntanks do very, very well. I know Kurt hates it, but it can really offer a lot to a team if it's spec'd the right way and used correctly. It's definitely a Pokemon I've drafted in the past and really enjoyed. Okay. Next up, we have the better of the two, though. He's actually going to go up here in A tier, and I don't care what anybody says. Drapion. Whether it be spreading knockoffs, and that's a big downside to Skuntank, too, is there's a dark type that can't knock, which is pretty terrible. Spreading knockoffs, taunting, swords dancing up and being like some stall breaker set, whether it be with Sniper or Battle Armor to not get crit. You can Toxic Spikes. You have great coverage offensively and a solid speed tier 95. There's nothing not to love about Drapion, on top of all the added defensive benefits of being a poison dark type. It's just a great Pokemon, man, and I really, really do enjoy it a lot. I think it's a very, very good mod, and I would recommend you give it a try if you haven't done so already, because it's great. But yeah, next up we have Toxicroak. I'm going to put Toxicroak here in C tier. Solid offensively. I did draft it in like a limited meta, like in the Crown Tundra decks, not Crown Tundra decks. What was it called? Isle of Armor decks. I had it on like a pseudo rain team. Dry Scan is nice there. It's also nice on rain. It's also nice as a Scald Switch in a lot of instances. It really bullies bulky waters. Things like Toxapex in general just get absolutely murked by most Toxicroaks, which is funny. But we'll talk about Pex here in a little bit. But yeah, it's a very, very solid Pokemon offensively. It's a bit slow and a bit squishy, but it has ample priority as well in Vacuum Wave, Sucker Punch, things like that, to where you can kind of make up for that a little bit, which is nice. Okay, on to Gen 5. Man, we are schmoovin', guys. We have Scolipede, and I'm putting Scolipede in A tier. I love this Pokemon, whether it be Swords Dance, whether it be Spiking and Endeavoring, whether it be just like offensive Life Orb, whether it be Protect 3 attacks, Spike 3 attacks, things like that. This Pokemon is very threatening immediately. Speed Boost is an incredible ability, and giving it to a Pokemon like Scolipede is awesome. Really allowing to either spec into its bulk or its attack and just absolutely rip through teams, whether it be offensively or indirectly, with spikes damage and things like that. So I love Scolipede. I've drafted it a million times, and I assume I'll draft it a million times in the future. We have another great spiker, all the poison types and their great spiking capabilities here in Garbodor next. It's going to go up here in B tier. Another Pokemon that I love for its value, whether it be just that annoying Rocky Helmet, Aftermath, Fish Death, Pivot, being a good fighting resist as well, which is awesome. Spiking, T-Spiking, Booming, even being somewhat offensive with like Gunk plus Drain Punch or Seed Bomb or Stomping Tantrum, whatever it may be. It usually has pretty good coverage offensively for a lot of teams as well. So I actually really like Garbodor. I think it's a great Pokemon for the price point that it's typically at. I'm almost done with Gen 5. We have Amoonguss next, which is another Pokemon I'm not personally too big on. I think objectively I do have to put it in B tier. Regenerator plus Switch is a Draft League player's best friend. If you haven't drafted your first, regen balanced team, if you haven't taken your Regenidity yet, I would do so. And Amoonguss is definitely a candidate to go on a team like that, just regenning and switching and Sporing and switching and Giga Drain and switch and Foul Play and things like that. It's a very straightforward mod. It can be a little bit passive in some matchups, but it is a big, big nuisance and requires a lot of respect in the builder and in the battle itself. You gotta make sure you keep your things to break Amoonguss around, your things to pivot in on spores. You have to know where you're putting to sleep throughout the game, things like that. And yeah, Amoonguss is just, again, an overall very, very great Pokemon. Next up, we have Dragalge, and Dragalge is going to go here in C tier. I think offensively, it's great with adaptability plus Dragon and Poison. It's very hard to switch to this thing. Also, Focus Blast to hit the steel types that want to switch into your stabs potentially. You can flip them around. You can be Assault Vest with its very good natural Spadef. This is, I know it's neutral to Fairy, but this is basically a Fairy check on its own because of that Spadef set. It can flip turn around, like I said, and it has good coverage offensively. Biggest downside is it's very slow, and it feels like it's very hard to fit on the teams in instances, but it's still a very good Pokemon. That is the only poison type introduced in Gen 6. I just realized. Dragalge is the only Kalos poison type that they introduced. All the other ones were Eternimons. That's insane. And even then, we have three Pokemon that we're going to be ranking from Gen 7. This is insane how little poison types there really are in the later gens. I never noticed it. Toxapex, oh man, I think objectively I have to put an S tier. It's not a Pokemon that I'm particularly big on. I've actually been one of the biggest Toxapex haters for years now. But after using it in CGT and even the subpar results, I have to admit its pivoting capabilities are just like unrivaled in the region plus Switch department, especially spreading knockoffs and scalds. You do have to play very particularly and meticulously around it. I mean, I lost a game to Patmac this season because I let Toxapex in on the thing that could set up and beat my team, and Toxapex couldn't really stop it from doing so in that specific instance. So, yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. It's not the best Pokemon in the world, in my opinion, maybe just because of how I use it. But I think objectively, it deserves to be an S tier here, personally. It's not like the other ones where I feel like I can kind of be like, you know, a little bit more lenient on. But yeah. Next up, we have Salazzle, not Salandit. Salazzle, I'm going to go ahead and put in B tier here. Poison plus Fire is incredible, and Corrosion's an amazing ability. If a Pokemon a little bit more bulky than Salazzle got Corrosion, it'd be a pretty broken ability, right? But nonetheless, it's still good in a fast Pokemon in the sense that you can sub and Toxic down 99% of the game in matchups if you do position yourself correctly and get a sub up on an aggressive switch or get a Toxic offer, whatever that might be. You'll be in a pretty good spot with your Salazzle, and then your dual stabs are very strong. You can nasty plot, you're very fast. It's just a solid Pokemon overall, which is nice. Next up, we have our last Gen 7 Poison type, but even then we have what? 1, 2, 3. So we have 4 more Pokemon in general. I will not be ranking Gmax or Naganadel because they aren't allowed, and they shouldn't be. If you're playing a league that allows Naganadel or Gmax Pokemon, get a new league. Okay. There we go. I had to get my 1 in per video, right? But next up, we have Big Nihilego. And I'm personally... Dude, I love Nihi. I'm going to put an S here. This might be some personal bias. Whether it be with a Fat Rocking Set, Assault Vest, Scarf, Meteor Beam, Power Herb. This Pokemon can really just, it feels like, find something to do in every single matchup and just be an absolute nuisance and really pepper and chip things down. It checks some special attackers that it's not supposed to with enough bulk investment or an AV or something like that. Like, I think I used it as my Prim switch at one time, but then I remembered Prim got flip turned. It wasn't a good idea. So not everything, but it just goes to show, like, special water moves are bouncing off of me. Which was obviously very nice. It can run away with games itself, or it can really support its teammates well, and I don't think there's much else you can ask out of a Pokemon at that price point for Nihilego, and it really kind of role condenses for you, and since it gives you a Rock type, which isn't really needed, but it gives you your Grounded Poison, Stealth Rock, as well as Toxic Spikes and things like that, as well as a solid, 103 base speed, I think it is, 104, something like that. It's faster than Garchomp, which I think is 102, so I think it's 103, but, yeah. Very good Pokemon, obviously. Next up, we have Toxtricity. As much as I would love to put him higher, I am going to put him in B tier. As a breaker, it's almost unrivaled how strong this Pokemon can be with Boom Burst plus Overdrive and then either Volt Switch or Sludge Wave or whatever it may be. With a Punk Rock boost behind it, this Pokemon just nukes everything, man. It absolutely rocks the metagame, which is obviously, you know, very, very solid. The only issue is that it's very slow. Electro Poison isn't known for its insane defensive utility as a defensive typing, so I think that's pretty important to note there. But yeah, still a good Pokemon. Then, lastly, we got the slow twins from Galar. First off, I'm going to put G-Bro here, an actual B tier. I feel like this Pokemon is so underexplored in Standard Draft. I feel like it's a very good Pokemon for its price point that I'm typically seeing it at. It's Regen plus Switch. It does a lot of the things as the next Pokemon I'm about to talk about. Maybe a little bit worse, but for a much cheaper price. And I definitely want to try it out myself because I feel like it's very slept on. And then lastly, we have, which unironically the best Pokemon on the list, and Galar Slowking. Just an absolute behemoth. I was a 100% a G-King hater, and then I sipped the G-King Kool-Aid, and I realized it's an amazing Pokemon that I would take round 1 if I, was a late enough pick. Whether it be with Assault Vest sets, which you're going to see 70% of the time, throw on Future Sight and Sludge Bomb and Scald, and all these moves to get passive damage, or just break through teams as well, because you're solid offensively, or whether it be with Nasty Plot and Calm Mind variants, whether it be Trick Room variants, whether it be Slack Off 3 attacks, Resist Berry variants. I have never seen a G-King matchup in which you should not bring it. I've never seen a bad G-King matchup, and every time I've used it, it's just blown my mind away how well it molds onto every type of team and does its job so well. So, all hail Lord G-King, because it's broken. And yeah, that is going to be the tier list. Look at that, already done. This is probably one of my weirdest tier lists in my opinion, because I really do value a lot of these lower tier poisons on a lot of drafts, and I think that definitely reflects in this list, particularly in B tier. There's some crackhead picks in there, but that's just how I feel personally. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, if you think I'm tripping on something, or if you're like, man, G-Bro is broken. I would love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Later.